This is the A6600 versus the A7C. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The Sony A6600 is Sony's top-of-the-line APS-C censored mirrorless camera. The A7C is Sony's entry-level full-frame mirrorless camera. And yet, both of these cameras are remarkably similar. I'll do this video in 5 parts. First, I'll talk about the similarities between the two cameras. Second, I'll talk about the physical differences between the two of them. Third, technical differences between the two of them. Fourth, real-life usage differences between the two of them. And number 5, I'll give you my verdict between these two cameras. So let's get started. These two cameras are remarkably close in dimensions and weight. Both are compact, travel-friendly cameras. Both have 24 megapixel sensors. Both have mic ports and headphone jacks. Both have one SD card slot. Both camera bodies are dust and moisture resistant. Both of them have IBIS or in-body image stabilization, which according to Sony provides 5 stops of performance improvement. Both cameras record at over 9 frames per second continuously. Both have a maximum shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. Both record oversampled 4K video up to 30 frames per second with no record limit. They also don't overheat after an hour of recording like some other previous Sony models. Both cameras have S-Log2, S-Log3, and HLG picture profiles. Both have touchscreens. Unfortunately, you can't use them to go through the menu, but you can use these touchscreens to autofocus. Both run off the same Sony Z-type battery that provides excellent battery life. These cameras can also be run off of USB power. Both cameras have class-leading, dare I say industry-leading autofocusing systems with eye autofocus and impressive tracking. Both have Wi-Fi, NFC, and Bluetooth. Now, let's talk about physical differences between these two camera bodies. The A6600 is slightly more compact, however it has a much better grip. It fits my hand much better. And after carrying it around for a couple of hours or even some minutes, you will notice the difference. I think that the shallow grip on the A7C is possibly one of the worst design decisions on this new camera from Sony. The A6600 has an APS-C size sensor with thin copper wiring to help improve sensitivity and overall performance. On the other hand, the A7C has a full-frame sensor that has BSI or backside illumination, which makes it more sensitive to light, which is good. The sensor on the A7C is definitely better technology without question. The A6600 has a flip-up selfie screen, whereas the A7C has a fully articulating screen. Both are good screens, you really can't go wrong. Personally, I like the flip-up screen on the A6600 just a little bit more because it's easier to use quickly. For example, if you want to take a low-angle image, you just flip it up and you're ready to snap the photo, versus on the A7C, you kind of have to move it a little bit. So you have to flip it out and then rotate it to get a low angle shot. While on the topic of screens, their resolution is identical. However, the A6600 screen is 3 inches in overall diameter versus 2.75 inches with the A7C. Similarly, the electronic viewfinder resolution is the same on both cameras, but for some strange and stupid decision by Sony, the A7C has a viewfinder magnification of 0.59x, while the A6600 has a much better 0.7x. The A7C has way fewer buttons, specifically fewer customizable buttons on the top and on the back of the camera. That being said, the relocation of the record button to the top of the camera instead of to the side grip area was a smart decision by Sony. It makes recording yourself much easier. But for photography, it is annoying not having access to a custom button or two on top, such as what you get with the A6600. The A7C has USB-C, the A6600 does not. Lastly, the A6600 comes in one color, whereas the A7C comes in this retro-esque silver top color, which looks excellent. It is definitely the nicer looking camera of the two. Alright, so now let's talk about technical differences between these two cameras. The A6600 has 425 phase detection and 425 contrast detection autofocus points that cover 84% of the sensor. On the other hand, the A7C has 693 phase detection autofocus points and the same 425 contrast detection autofocus points that cover 93% of the sensor. So what does this mean? Well, honestly, nothing. Both autofocus systems are top-notch, and I don't think either camera outfocuses the other by any perceptible differences. You do have better control over the A7C autofocus because there are 7 options for settings versus only 3 on the A6600, but that's really the only difference in real-world use. The A6600 shoots at 11 frames per second. The A7C shoots at 10 frames per second. Not much of a difference, but the buffer difference is significant. The A6600 will shoot 116 JPEGs in a row, or 46 raw photos in a row, before slowing down, whereas the A7C will shoot 220 JPEGs or 115 raw photos in a row. That's roughly double the buffer difference. So for sports shooters who are holding down the shutter for a very long time trying to capture a moment, the A7C is the better option. The A7C captures gyro data, so you can use that to stabilize video footage in post. That's not a feature on the A6600. The A6600 takes UHS-1 SD cards, while the A7C takes UHS Type 2 SD cards, so a little bit faster SD cards. The shutter sound on the A6600 is just okay, but the shutter sound on the A7C is much better in my opinion. Alright, so I think that is it for the important technical differences between these two cameras. Before I go on to the real world differences between using both of these, let's talk about today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for creative and curious people. You can explore new skills, deepen passions, and get creative. You can take classes in animation, film and video, music, photography, productivity, and much more. A few days ago, I watched a class called Grab Your Audience, Create Enthralling Intros for Your Videos, which was taught by J.R. Alley, because I've been wanting to start doing some more cringy acting in my intros to these YouTube videos if my wife is up to it. The class was very hands-on and I learned quite a few tricks in adding visual effects in Adobe After Effects, which were awesome. I would highly recommend this class if you are interested in growing your editing skills. Skillshare is all about learning, so there are no ads and they are always launching new premium classes so you can keep developing your creativity. And with an annual subscription, it is less than $10 per month. But because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 subscribers to use the link down in the description below will get a free trial of premium membership. So definitely check that out down below. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to these two cameras. All right, so what are the real world differences between these two camera bodies? The first thing that I'll say is the A6600 is absolutely more comfortable to use as a camera. The larger grip and the better EVF are huge. The additional buttons on top make controlling the camera settings and using manual lenses much easier on the A6600. On the other hand, the color science on the A7C is much newer, and you could see a bit of an improvement in these side-by-side portraits of my wife. Particularly the skin tones are a tad improved. It's subtle, but it is there. Not saying that you can't edit the A6600 photos to look like the A7C's photos, because you can, but straight out of the camera, they are a little bit nicer on the A7C. Neither camera has strong image stabilization performance. That's never been Sony's strong suit. However, the gyro stabilization of the A7C is very good. You can get away with using just the A7C handheld and trick a few people into thinking that you are using a gimbal. As for sharpness and resolution, the final product that you get with either camera is dependent on the lens. In these comparisons, I am using the Tamron 17-70 f2.8 on the A6600, which is a very good, very sharp lens. And on the A7C, I'm using an equally good and equally sharp lens, the Tamron 28-75 f2.8, which has been a long favorite with full-frame Sony shooters. As you can see in these side-by-side photos, the difference isn't staggering. I'm not saying that the A7C isn't a better photo camera, because ultimately it has a much newer, much better sensor that has much better tech behind it, but the A6600 is not far behind at all, and if you are not zooming in to pixel peep like I am here, you will be hard pressed to really tell a difference, especially if you're just taking casual photos of your family and your friends or your kids. You will be very happy with the results that you get with the A6600. There are, however, certain advantages to having a full frame sensor. One advantage is getting shallow depth of field is easier on a full frame. There is more compression at any given focal length. The second and major thing that everyone and their mom talks about is the advantage in low light. A full frame sensor with the same number of pixels means each pixel is larger, so it can gather more light. Here's what that looks like in practice. In this shot, I'm using the exact same settings at ISO 100. Which is which? Well, if you're asking yourself that, then the difference isn't that big. Both cameras are good in low light with the right lenses. In this case, the A7C is on the left and the A6600 is on the right. Okay, last example, basically the same thing. The same settings at ISO 4000 on both cameras. And I wouldn't say the difference is huge, but again, the A7C does outperform the A6600 without question. So if you are shooting a ton of stuff in low light, the full frame sensor is definitely gonna help you out. All right, so after all of that, what is my verdict? What is the best camera out of these two to purchase? I'm going to give you the short answer and the longer, much better answer. The short and simple answer is this. If you aren't sure, the A6600 is probably more camera than you will ever need. It is comfortable to use, a top-tier performer, and will provide excellent photo and video results for years to come. If you need the better low-light performance and you like the characteristics of full-frame images, or if you just flat out convince yourself that full frame is the only way, then the A7C is absolutely right now the best full frame mirrorless bargain out on the market. And it is a much better video camera than the A7 III is because of unlimited recording, no overheating, better autofocus, and the fully articulating screen. All right, and here is my long answer, and this might ruffle a few feathers, but honestly, I don't care. Maybe the better camera to buy out of these two is neither one of them. The problem with YouTube is that there are a lot of people pushing the full frame envelope. Buy a full frame, get a full frame. You want the best, right? It's a full frame camera. Full frame is better in low light. Full frame is cool. Full frame is an upgrade. You should definitely upgrade to full frame. I've heard it over and over and over again. And in the meanwhile, a lot of those channels are using APS-C cameras to record themselves and to post that onto YouTube, which is just crazy. I personally think there's nothing wrong with APS-C cameras whatsoever, and you should not feel bad for owning an A6600 or an A6000 for that matter over a full frame camera. In fact, I know many channels that shoot with an A6000, those videos look better than a lot of these big channels that have A7S3s and A7R4s. In the end, camera bodies don't really matter as much as people think that they do. Far more important is pairing your camera body with a great lens. Sony cameras have gotten really good over the last 2 years. We can nitpick about small grips and dumb EVF settings all day long, but ultimately at the end of the day, the images and the video that this A7C produces are stellar. They are superb. And in the right hands, even something like an A6600 or an A6100 or an A6000 will produce amazing results with some skill and some practice. There is also a very practical and price-conscious side of me. I think that both of these cameras right now are overpriced. You can get 90% of the A6600's performance for about a third of the price by getting the A6100. Yeah, it has a cheaper build, it isn't weatherproof, and it doesn't have stabilization or the larger grip or the larger battery, but if we're talking about end results, if I recorded this entire YouTube video with the A6100 instead of the A6600, could you really tell? In fact, that's what I did use for this video. This is an A6100. Could you tell that it wasn't an A6600 and it didn't cost almost 3 times as much? I couldn't. So the question becomes, do you really need an A6600? And even sometimes I myself think I don't really need this camera. I'd be perfectly happy with my A6100, and I use that camera all the time to take family photos, to take video, and to take with me. The only real reason I reach for my A6600 for YouTube videos is because I'm too lazy to swap out batteries if I'm recording for a longer session, and that's about it. Now onto the A7C. I like this camera as much as I like GameStonk right now. But in the back of my head, I know that $1,800 is just the price of the camera body alone. I won't be able to take pictures with it. I need a lens, and for a good lens, such as this Tamron, you're gonna have to pay up. This thing used is about $600, brand new, it's about $800. So all in, brand new, it looks like I'm going to have to spend $2,600 on a camera and a lens setup, which is quite a chunk of change. And if ever I want to buy full frame lenses in the future, they are in general about 30 to 50% more than what I would be spending with an APS-C lens. Don't get me wrong, there are certainly deals out there. I bought this A7C for $1,420 used, and it is in mint condition. It's a great camera. And for that price, I would certainly recommend picking up an A7C over an A6600. In fact, if they were the same price, it would be an easy decision, get the A7C. I guess if I could summarize everything that I've said in this very long-winded answer to a very simple question, it would be step one, get better at your craft. So I would say practicing with the equipment that you have is of much more value than going out and buying new camera bodies. Step two, I would highly recommend getting better glass. Ultimately, a new camera body is going to help, but better glass is going to help a whole lot more. And then step three, make sure that when you are upgrading your camera bodies, you are going to be utilizing all of the additional features of that new, more expensive camera body. If you're just going to go out and buy a Sony A1 for $6,000 so you can vlog with it, I would say that's probably not the best use of your funds, but there are people out there who will probably end up doing just that. Anyway, I'm getting off track. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys learned something. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of both of these cameras and which one of these two is your preference, or if you're just sticking with the A6000. As always, thank you so much for all of your comments, all of your likes, and your support. Stay tuned for more. If you aren't subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And while you're there, hit the like button as well, because that helps me out a little bit. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.